The film opens with a young Britt sitting on the back seats of a car and playing with his superhero action figure before the chauffeur takes him up to meet his father, who appears to be the owner of the largest newspaper in the city. Britt's father scolds him about being in a fight in his school again, and Britt defends himself by saying that he tried to stop some bullies from picking on a kid. His father says it doesn't matter if he tries but does not succeed, and he only asks from Britt to take care of himself, which seems to be a quite difficult task for him. The film cuts to 20 years later, and we see Chadnovsky, a Mafia boss, walking into a club and meeting its owner Danny Clear. He tells Danny that he has worked hard in his life and has achieved his goal of controlling every single crime that happens in Los Angeles, adding that before opening his club, he should have asked for his permission, which in turn means that he should now transfer the ownership of his club to him. Danny is a pretty funny guy, and he starts talking trash about Chadnovsky, telling him that he is not scary and he has gotten too old for this business, therefore he should retire. However, Chadnovsky kills Danny's bodyguards and then blows the club up, proving that he is indeed a Mafia boss. Meanwhile, Britt throws a wild party and causes mayhem. He takes a girl home to sleep with her, but the next morning his father finds them and tells him that he should do something better with his life, or at least stop embarrassing him, since the newspapers have published articles about yesterday's party. However, his father dies soon because he was stung by a bee, and now Britt has to fill in his shoes and take leadership of the newspaper. The next morning, Britt wants to enjoy a cappuccino on his bed, but the coffee is not good today. He starts screaming and asking why, and one of the housemaids informs him that Kato, his father's mechanic, used to make his coffee, but he was fired yesterday by Britt along with the rest of the employees that worked for his father. Britt demands to bring Kato back, and when he comes back in the house, Britt asks him how come a mechanic used to make coffees. Kato takes him in the kitchen and presents him with a coffee machine that he has built himself to make the perfect coffee. As they get to know each other a bit closer, Britt realizes that Kato is quite talented, as he shows Britt some of the modifications he has made on his father's cars, such as making them bulletproof and equipping them with weapons. Britt asks Kato what he thinks of his father, and Kato says his father was not a good man, which makes Britt completely agree. Britt also says that his father was mean and he doesn't deserve to be remembered as a good man while he was not. That's why he doesn't like that the city made him a statue. Britt wants to do something about it, and they take one of the cars to drive near the statue. When they are there, Britt cuts the statue's head off, while he also notices a gang harassing people. Britt tries to stop them, but he gets knocked down. However, Kato runs to his aid and they beat those gangsters up. When they return home, Britt suggests that they make this a regular thing and get on the streets each night to beat up bad guys. Kato says the world thinks they are bad guys, but Britt says they can use that in their advantage because the bad guys usually exploit the hero's goodness, but in their case, the bad guys will think they are also bad guys and won't be able to find their weakness. Britt has an idea and he wants to build a reputation for them. Thus, he visits his newspaper and calls everyone for a meeting in order to discuss what happened with his father's statue. One of the editors says that it was an act of vandalism, so they should not really give that incident more exposure, but Britt says they are going to do an article on this vandal and they are going to name him the Green Hornet. The next day, Britt also meets his father's secretary, Leonard, and tells her to keep track of the Green Hornet's next moves. A short montage shows Britt and Kato getting ready for their first mission, and when they are ready, they take the car and roll on the roads. However, they have no idea where to start, and Britt calls Leonard to ask her about some crimes taking place in the city. Britt and Kato find a gang, but they slightly cower, arguing about what they should do and how they should do it. No matter what, Kato stops the car and they start a fight with the gang, eventually eliminating all of them. Britt grabs one of the thugs and asks him who they work for, and the thug replies they all work for Chadnovsky. Right next, they burst into a lab where Chadnovsky's men produce drugs, and Britt gives one of the men a card, instructing him to tell his boss that the city belongs to him now. Kato and Britt continue their action as a dynamic duo, and soon they have to rest and take care of some other business at the newspaper. Kato and Secretary Leonard seem to be a bit friendlier with each other than Britt would imagine, and Kato asks her to go out for a drink. Britt is a bit jealous and tells Kato to bring him some coffee while he tries to invite Leonard for dinner. However, Leonard gets a phone call and turns her back on Britt, which gives Kato the perfect opportunity to grab Britt and tell him to never treat him like that again. While driving back home, Britt asks Kato if he is still mad at him and says he behaved like that because he likes Leonard, but she doesn't like him back. However, that night, Kato goes on a date with Leonard and tries to be intimate with her, but Leonard doesn't seem to be liking it. Their conversation wanders around the Green Hornet, and Leonard tells Kato that the Green Hornet will probably be dead soon because he and his accomplice have attracted too much attention on them. Meanwhile, Chadnovsky's men tell them that they were unable to find anything on the Green Hornet, as if this guy showed up out of thin air. In addition, he is setting the wrong example because he is acting on his own, which has made the Armenian and the Korean Mafia want to act independently. When Kato returns home, Britt is waiting for him and tells him the Green Hornet has a mail in his inbox. That mail is from Chadnovsky, who invites the Green Hornet for a meeting the next day at noon. Kato says that this must be a trap, but Britt tells him he is going to come up with a good plan and they will accept Chadnovsky's invitation. Britt wants Kato to go home since he wants to devise the plan on his own, to prove that he doesn't need Kato to babysit him all the time. They meet with Chadnovsky the next day, and they immediately fall into his trap when 3 trucks trap their cars and throw it in a large pit and bury it. Kato launches a missile from the car, and they are able to crawl up. After some brief moments of shooting and various attempts to kill them, Britt and Kato escape and return home. Kato tells Britt that he is reckless and an egomaniac who is not much different than his father, even though he despised him. Britt says he is the head and the body of this operation, and Kato tells him that he would have done nothing without his assistance. They start fighting, jumping from one room to another until they end up in the pool. Britt tells Kato that he is fired and Kato drives away, paying Leonard a visit. However, Leonard does not welcome him and punches him on the stomach because Britt fired her as well for going out with Kato. Meanwhile, Chadnovsky sends his men out and they kill anyone that is dressed in a way that resembles the Green Hornet. The next day at the newspaper, the editor tells Britt that he warned him about this and now a massacre happened, adding that Britt should let him run the newspaper. Britt also gets a visit from Judge Scanlon, who asks him to work together and present the facts in a way that will benefit him and get him more votes for his re-election. Britt says Scanlon came to bribe him because he thinks he can push him around, but a bit later, he realizes that his father has been on Scanlon's payroll and he has not been objective with the presentation of various facts, mostly trying to get Scanlon more followers by not mentioning specific crime incidents. Britt runs to Leonard and tells her that the newspaper has been distorting the news. He knows nothing about journalism, so he needs her back. The first thing that Leonard tells him to do is have a meeting with Scanlon and make a research on him, while at the same time, Kato receives an email from Chadnovsky, telling him that he will get $1 million if he kills Britt. Britt meets with Scanlon, and the latter not only admits that he has been bribing Britt's father, but also that he killed him. Britt has recorded everything, and he starts making the connection. Scanlon has been working with Chadnovsky, and his father actually refused to take any more bribes, and thus, Chadnovsky forced Scanlon to kill his father because he would start writing about Chadnovsky's crimes on the newspaper. While everyone expects Kato to kill Britt, Kato helps Britt out of the trap and they escape with the car. Scanlon, Chadnovsky, and his men are after them, while Britt gets the chance to apologize to Kato for his behavior and tell him that he was jealous of him. Eventually, Britt tells Kato they need to go to the newspaper and make the recording in his USB public. After lots of shooting and speed racing, they make it to the newspaper, where they are still being hunted. Britt and Kato run on the top floor, and that's where the final battle takes place. Kato goes against Chadnovsky while Britt has to deal with Scanlon. Scanlon gets the USB in his hands while the police burst in and start shooting the Green Hornet and his accomplice, since they think they are criminals. However, Kato won't allow Scanlon to have the USB, and he runs over him with the car while Britt and he ensure their survival by ejecting the car's seats. They run to Leonard's house and tell her the truth about everything and how they hired her to actually use her guidance for their missions. Britt has been shot on the shoulder, but he won't go to the hospital because the police knows the Green Hornet was shot on the shoulder and they will make the connection. Leonard asks them to be quiet for a second so she can think, and the film ends with the actualization of her plan. The next day, Britt stands on a podium and gives a speech, saying that he intends to restore his newspaper to its former glory. Kato stops by with the Hornet's car and masked like the Hornet's sidekick, and says that the Green Hornet sends his regards, popping an empty gun while Britt pretends to be shot on the shoulder. Britt is being transferred to the hospital and he smiles at Leonard for coming up with this devious plan. Subscribe and hit that like button to help our channel grow. Turn the notifications on so you won't miss any of our new videos. Thanks for watching.